My jungle will lure you in, with paths that are deceptively apparent and secrets that will never be uncovered. Silver starlight may show you the way, shape-shifting shadows will lead you astray. So open your eyes, I shall show you a world etched deep in my mind and free from your kind. Only the greatest explorers of the unknown, those who are willing to lose themselves, can unravel the enigma. For the essence of the jungle lies not in being found, but in getting lost. Welcome to Thorn's Jungle. Alrighty, welcome to episode 2 of Thorn's Jungle. Now, on my last episode about the Mokele Mbembe, I said I won't be doing cryptozoology topics on every episode. Now, this one may sound like it's cryptozoology, but it actually isn't. This is an animal that is a perfect example of a cryptozoological animal that became a real animal. You know, and I always say that most animals are cryptozoological animals until they're formally discovered. And the Bili Ape is a perfect example of that. I mean, this thing wasn't really witnessed by scientists until 2003. Now, just to sum up quickly what the Bili Ape actually is, it is basically a chimpanzee that is the size roughly of a gorilla, so a giant chimpanzee. And in 1996, a Swiss photographer called Carl Amann was looking for gorillas to photograph around the Bili Forest, which is in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Now, in this Bili Forest, there isn't actually any gorillas, so not too sure why he was in there looking for gorillas. Maybe he was looking for other populations of gorillas. But he did find a skull that was a chimp skull, but it had a sagittal crest like gorillas have. So if you look at a gorilla, you'll see it's got like a conical shaped head, like a cone head. And this is sort of the only existing ape that has a sagittal crest. Rarely, male chimpanzees, on sort of rare occasions, will be found with sagittal crests, and also orangutans, but it's nowhere near as common and as consistent as it is in gorillas. A sagittal crest is like a ridge of bone that runs at the top of the skull, and it's used for a few reasons. One being gorillas have such powerful necks and jaws, they need another bone there to house the muscles for that. So, I mean, a gorilla has a bite force of about, I believe, 1,300 pounds per square inch, PSI. So that's larger than a lion's, larger than a great white shark's. So they have such a powerful bite. But Carl Amann found this skull and was like, that looks weird. And then he was talking to some people and managed to purchase some photographs that were taken from a motion detecting camera of what looked like gigantic chimpanzees walking around. And he thought, this is something. This is pretty crazy. No one's really described these giant apes in the Western world. Locals sort of know a bit more about them, especially poachers. They encounter them quite a bit. And he found scat of an ape. Now, these scats were 3 times the size of a normal chimpanzee. So these Bili apes, they're big shitters. They poo big. And the footprints around these scats were bigger than any chimps and even bigger than a gorilla's. So that's just a testament to what we're dealing with here with the Bili Ape. They're a big ape. So he went back to the Western world and set an expedition. Not for 5 years later. There's a lot of civil war going on in Africa at this time, so reaching into the Bili Forest and into sort of remote areas in the Congo is difficult. It's hard. It's dangerous. So it wasn't until 2001 where him and a team went back looking, but they didn't actually find anything. They found nothing. No Bili Apes. No real evidence that the Bili Apes were there. And then 2 years later, in 2003, was when the first scientists actually laid eyes on the Bili Ape. So that's a big deal. That is, just seeing an animal alone doesn't prove its existence. But with scat, with footprints, with, photo evidence, and also being witnessed by scientists, that paints a bigger picture that pretty much puts all the pieces together. And, chimpanzees are different from gorillas, obviously by morphological differences, anatomical, behavioral differences. Like most chimps nest in trees. Gorillas nest on the ground. I mean, they're too heavy to nest up trees. They can weigh well over 200 kilograms or 500 pounds. But the Bili Apes, they noticed, were making nests like gorillas were on the ground. They would occasionally find Bili Ape nests up trees, but for the most part, they were on the ground. So that tends to, make you believe that these apes are big, too big to nest up trees. Now, the thing with these Bili Apes are, they're a giant chimpanzee. And most people look at chimpanzees and they think they're these cute, cuddly animals that, Michael Jackson has as a pet, and plays around with. But in actual fact, chimpanzees are cunning, intelligent, emotional, just formidable animals. And if a chimp decides it wants to have a piece of you, it'll have you in pieces, I've dealt with most large animals on land that can kill you. I've experienced wild tigers, lions, leopards, elephant, rhino, hippo, you name it, bears, and nothing makes me more nervous, probably actually excluding the hippo in this, and I'll go into my little hippo incident in another time, but the animals that make me the most nervous, or the most cautious, would be the chimpanzees. I've never actually seen chimps in the wild, but they make me nervous because I've seen what they can do to a person. And they don't just bite you, they don't just, bash you. They beat you and dismember you until you basically resemble a dropped lasagna on the floor, and with a lot of animals you can read their behavior, and with chimps to a certain degree you can, but chimps are so much like humans where, they have such different personalities and their minds all work individually, where you can just get an asshole of a chimp that decides he doesn't like you and he's going to pull your arms off. And that's what chimps do. They sort of they take away your hands. So you can't hurt them back pretty much. So the first thing they'll go for is they'll disable you. They'll disable your hands. They often, the sort of dominant male chimps will remove the genitals because it's like a dominance thing. So your genitals are taken away, your hands are gone. Then they'll start, pulling your face off, disemboweling you, pummeling you, so beating you with their hands. And if you see photos of people that have been attacked by chimps, I mean, they don't even resemble a human being anymore. It is insane. And I mean, that famous incident that happened with the captive chimp, I believe the woman was on Oprah a few years later. This was a woman had a pet chimp, and he was a big chimp, you know, he was about 90 kilos, so over 200 pounds, which is a big chimp. Um, and the friend was over, and the chimp, you know, they get to a certain age where they don't want to be in cages anymore, and they're impossible to deal with at that age and size. Decided it didn't like her, and it pulled her hands off, it took her face off. Now she just resembles Pac-Man. She's just a faceless face with a slit for a mouth and no hands. And then the chimp got out into the street and the police arrived. It went for the police shot it a few times, it pulled the door off the police car. So chimps aren't to be messed with, you know. They are formidable animals. And I mean, you can be studying chimps and be fine around them and they'll be fine around you, but then, like I said, they are so much like people. You don't want to encounter the Jeffrey Dahmer of chimps, you know. Just this sadistic chimp that is different to the rest, decides he wants to mess you up, doesn't like you there, and that'll be the end of you. So picture a chimp that is gigantic. Now you're really facing a formidable animal. You know, an animal that you really don't want to mess with. So when a group of scientists first sort of had an interaction with these gigantic chimps, they noticed the Bili Apes were coming sort of towards them slowly, and what the scientists were saying were it wasn't a sort of get out of my territory or inquisitive approach. It was a stalking approach, like it would with prey. You know, and chimpanzees do eat meat. They hunt colobus monkeys quite often, and if you witness a colobus monkey being eaten by a chimpanzee, it's not pretty. So how scary is that? These Bili Apes were approaching like they would prey. But later sort of expeditions saw that the apes were kind of, you know, a bit more relaxed around them. Once they saw that the people were people, once they saw their faces, something sort of clicked. Something was like, okay, these animals actually resemble us, and vice versa. So I guess they sort of stopped looking at them as more prey and sort of started looking at them through an inquisitive, curious eye. Thank God for that. The morphology of these apes is pretty crazy. I mean, a normal chimpanzee footprint measures sort of average about 26 centimeters to the upper sort of normal area of about 29 centimeters. The Bili Ape's footprint starts at about 28 centimeters and is about roughly 34 centimeters. So that's bigger than any normal chimpanzee footprint and bigger than most gorilla footprints, which is insane. Their skull for a normal chimp is about 190 mil to 210 millimeters long. The Bili Apes was averaging about 220 mil. So that's actually beyond the upper normal range for a chimpanzee. So again, this is a big chimp. And this is a crazy story. This was witnessed by the locals rather than the scientists, but they reckon these apes hunt lions and leopards, which is just insane. You know, lions aren't, I mean, the lion thing I can kind of, I mean, lions aren't super common in that area at all. It's more forested in the Congo, it's more jungly. Lions are more grassland and woodland sort of dwelling. But leopards certainly are, and there's groups of Bili Apes called the leopard killers, and they say that they hunt leopards, which is the opposite way around, because leopards do hunt chimpanzees from time to time. So these are apes that hunt leopards, which is crazy. Now, if it can hunt a leopard, it could easily take out a human. And chimpanzees are the only, well, excluding human beings, chimpanzees are the only other apes that have preyed on humans. There are accounts of them taking babies off people's backs and running into the jungle and then consuming them, which is absolutely horrifying. Imagine that. And I mean, all you need to do is look up a video of a chimpanzee eating a colobus monkey and imagine that being a human baby, and you've got some pretty disturbing images because it's not a pretty sight. It really isn't. But I really wanted to do a episode on the Bili Ape because basically nobody knows these apes exist. And even scientists don't really know why they are so morphologically different to normal chimpanzees. They took hair samples of Bili apes and found that they are closest, if not identical, to the eastern chimpanzee, which is just, it's very strange because morphologically they are so different rather, but sort of genetically and DNA wise they are just eastern chimpanzees, but like everything anatomically just is just so different. The skull size, the sagittal crest, the footprints, the scat size, their behavior. Apparently, they're like bipedal or bipedal a lot of the times, which means they walk on two legs, which our great apes, chimpanzees, bonobos, gorillas, and orangutans, they can walk bipedally, but their hips and ball socket joints just aren't designed for sustained bipedalism. So this would suggest to me that Bili apes live in sort of more grassland areas and areas that are prone to flooding. Because if you put a chimpanzee or an ape, another ape like an orangutan or gorilla, in water, they stand up and they walk bipedally. They sort of wade through the water. So that would sort of suggest to me that these Bili apes, live in a more grassed area or more wetland area, which is kind of cool. But other morphological differences in appearances are apes are weird in the sense that they are so much like us that they go grey with age, just like we do. In gorillas, the older they get, the grey they get, but the grey is sort of limited to their backs. That's why you see the big male silverbacks. And I mean, a silverback gorilla isn't a different species of gorilla. It's just a normal dominant gorilla who's got a grey back. He's an old dominant gorilla. But with the Bili apes, they grey very early on in age. And the grey isn't limited to their backs. It actually greys all over their body pretty early on. I'm not too sure why this would happen. That's another thing that we don't know. Scientists, they only have a few photos of these animals. They've only witnessed them a few times. And, the DNA sample they got from the hair of the Bili ape, although it was closest match to an eastern chimpanzee, I believe they didn't do any mitochondrial DNA testing on it. So there's a lot still to be found out about these apes. And, there's another name for them is the Bondo mystery ape, because they are a mystery ape. Just think about it. Crazy big chimpanzees walking around the Bili forest, eating leopards, stalking humans. It's nuts, and that's why I wanted to do an episode on the Bili Ape, because it's hard for scientists to get in there to study these animals because they do move around. Like chimpanzees, they do move. They're kind of nomadic, so they'll move around the forest in their groups. But they panhoot just like uh, chimpanzees do. They don't howl at the moon. Chimpanzees howl and hoot at the moon, but Bili apes don't, which is another difference. And I'm sure if they look and study Bili apes more, they definitely have to be a subspecies at least. At least a subspecies. I mean, they're definitely in the genus Pan, which is the genus of chimpanzees and bonobos. The chimpanzee is Pan troglodytes and the bonobo is Pan paniscus. So they just have to be a subspecies. They have to be. Behavior wise, physiological wise, it's just that DNA. If they can prove that there's something different about that DNA, then they can prove it's another subspecies or species. It just blows my mind that there are apes out there, or even big animals in general, that have only been discovered really in the past decade or two. And we're not talking about a little bug here, we're talking about a giant ape. So, I mean, this is going to be another short episode because not much is known about him, but I just felt like people need to know that this animal exists. This giant race. I mean, if we're talking it's the same subspecies as the eastern chimpanzees, then we are talking race here. It's a different race of chimpanzees. And I mean, you look around the world, there are different races of humans that are larger than other races. I believe there are tribes in Africa whose average height is about 6'3". I think the average height of a Icelandic man is 6'1", and then in America the average height of a man is about, I think, 5'9", 5'10". So that's a big difference in averages, and we are the same species, Homo sapien. So is the Bili Ape just another race of chimpanzee? Perhaps they are bigger because of sort of natural selection, where they have to hunt larger prey, and being larger is more advantageous. So those genes sort of lived on, but it's a mystery. The Bondo mystery ape. And I'll tell you what, they are lucky that these chimpanzees are fairly chilled, because I couldn't think of anything more horrifying than being apprehended by a chimpanzee. Nevertheless, a giant chimpanzee, the damage it could inflict on a human being would be colossal. Yeah, very, very scary. But, with these shorter episodes, I'm probably going to put 2 out a week, because there will be some that will be an hour, there will be some that will be about this length, but I'll put another one out this week because it is so short. You guys, the listeners, deserve to hear more of me talking. Alright, so tune in a few days. There'll be another episode out about a cool animal. But thanks for listening, and I hope you're intrigued about the Bili Ape as I am, because it definitely deserves intrigue. Alright, thanks guys. See you next time on Thorn's Jungle.